What's up, everybody? It's Kevin and Sergey once again welcoming you back to the channel for a very exciting episode where we are going to be interviewing two very special guests.
You know him, you love him. Rick Priestley is one of the more prolific writers in wargaming today, with awesome games under his belt such as Warhammer, Necromunda, Beyond the Gates of Antares, obviously, and Warlords of Erewhon.
And we have the very good friend of the channel, Tim Bancroft, with us as well today, the co-creator of Antares version 2, the showrunner for the Freeborn Shard podcast, an accomplished science fiction author, and the creator of several RPG systems, including The Quester's Guide to Duck. And welcome to the channel, Rick and Tim.
Hello, guys. Lovely to see you.
Fantastic to have you guys on.
Hi, guys.
It's a pleasure having you on for the first time, Rick. We've been really excited. And Tim, you're one of our best guests ever. Welcome to have you back.
Exactly. You're actually our first interview ever, so you kicked off this whole thing.
It's the truth, yeah.
I'm glad to have helped.
Now, obviously, we're super excited for version 2, but just in case some of the people watching this interview right now haven't heard of Antares or haven't really delved into what Antares is yet, in your own words, can you kind of describe the system and the setting?
Antares, shall I kick off?
No, I think that's you, Rick. Yeah.
I'll kick off and then Tim can correct me. Beyond the Gates of Antares is a science fiction combat system that I created when I left Games Workshop, and it was me trying to create a science fiction system that was very much more like a science fiction system I wanted to have rather than the 40k that we were stuck with for 20 years. Love 40k to bits, but been there, done that. So it was an opportunity to do something that was not, as they say, grimdark, but a more credible science fiction future. And it portrays a world or a kind of galaxy, a gaming universe, really, far in the future, where humanity has basically discovered a kind of portal. It's very 2001 Space Odyssey, anyway. And that portal has taken them through to a nexus to which any of the other portals connect. So that nexus is called Antares, and it orbits within the sphere of the star Antares. So basically, spaceship discovers portal, travels through to Antares, and from Antares can travel to any other place in not necessarily space. It could be time and space. And that is the Antarian Nexus. The Antarian Nexus is that series of worlds created, connected via that system. And it was invented, built, untold millennia ago by a mysterious species or race that we always called gate builders. We don't really know much about the gate builders, but they obviously flourished and then seemed to have disappeared. And the worlds that they connected together, well, presumably they were connected for a reason at the time. And those worlds sometimes have got independent civilizations on them. And in other cases, they've got ruins of civilizations. And one of the great things in the game is exploring for gate builder artifacts, mysterious artifacts left behind by the gate builder, which are fantastically advanced. Anyway, having discovered this, humanity spreads throughout the Nexus, rediscovers some of the gate builder technology and starts to advance and develops a massive civilization. But because everywhere's disconnected, you have to go to Antares to then come to another planet. So everywhere's disconnected. They develop a system where spacecraft traveling between places swap information, and it all happens automatically. And what you've got is a civilization that's built up of a kind of algorithms. Things have just connected automatically, and everything is run. Everything sort of references these what I call machine intelligences. So rather than being societies run by humans, the humans have a great old time, do as they wish, enjoy themselves, be creative, whilst machines or machine intelligences run the societies, build things, make things, decide what people do. And to some extent, it's either a socialist utopia or a socialist dystopia, depending on your point of view. Because no one has to work or do anything, but on the other hand, you don't really get free will doesn't exist anymore because the machines decide what's best for you because they know what's best for you. And that's the Antares universe. And against that, we have civilizations that develop in slightly different ways. Once they start to develop in different ways, their machine intelligences start to recognize each other as enemies and go, wait a minute, these people are not like us. They've made some bad decisions. They must be evil. And then they start fighting. And that's where the factions come from. Not because people make decisions, but because machines come to conclusions that machines do. So it's a slightly bizarre. It is a slightly odd. I just think it's like real world. That's what the real world is like, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah, we have a lot of discussions about that. People really like to kind of discuss the moral ambiguity of stuff like the Concord Combined Command and the Asaurian Sun attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I quite enjoy things that have got that kind of paradox to them. Sorry, my cat has just joined me.
Oh.
What's your cat's name?
This is Ziggy. This is Ziggy Stardust. He's an old boy now. He's Ziggy. He's a big old main coat. Well, say hello, Ziggy. Well, yeah,
That's
there
awesome.
you go, mate.
Quite photogenic. I love it.
Yeah, well, he'll probably come and annoy us. Put him down there. Yeah, me and Tim were only talking this morning, in fact, about how entertaining it is that the Freeborn are one of the few factions that are not born free. You know, it's a completely feudal society, you know.
Yeah.
So
The backwards are all really cool.
Yeah, and you know, the Gar are very sort of entertaining as well. It's sort of like a soldier, a cloned soldier species whose masters have all died out, so they only exist as a kind of like a military race, but they have no real. They're obsessively fighty, but don't really have any other purpose or reason to exist. And they think all of humanity is basically a deviant scum that needs destroying. You know, it's simplistic in a way, but it's all happened by a kind of series of accidents and happenstance. It's sort of evolutionary society. It doesn't make any sense. It's just how things turned out. And I quite enjoy it like that because I think that's how society actually does work. Belief is a very odd thing. You know, people believe the most outrageous nonsense.
Yeah,
That is the truth.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and for hundreds of years and thousands of years in some cases, and then people wake up and go, "Wait a minute, did we really do that?"
Oh, it's the truth, yeah, because there has to be some weirdness when you're a citizen of the Concord and you've invaded thousands of worlds, and you're like, "But we're great. Like a sandwich has just arrived, and I didn't even know I wanted it. Life is fantastic." But that is the truth. They have drone armies somewhere scouring the surface.
Well, they might even not on an average world. They might not even know what's happening because why would they? Why would you care? Why would you? Why would the machine intelligence choose to tell you that there's a war going on in this sector?
That's true.
What good would it do you? They might go, we think you need some adventure. Come and fight. You say, yes, fight. Put you on a starship, send you off. Is this really doing me good? Oh yes, get on with it.
Now, we on the Tabletop Warlords are obviously huge fans of the Antaran setting. We love this game so much. As far as version 2 that is going to be coming out here very soon, it's set to be released on May 1st. What changes have you guys made to the system that we should be most excited about, in your opinion?
I don't think we've made many changes, but then Tim reminds me of what changes we've made, and it's loads.
In order to answer, we were just, again, Rick and I were just commenting about this last week. In order to answer that, we've got to go back to the document on the new Nexus, which says what's new in V2.
Yeah.
because we can't quite remember what is and what isn't, and that's because one of the main changes is that it's all been one of the main things about version 2, I should say, is that it's not a radical departure from version 1. One of the things that was really critical throughout the whole of the discussions and the range of discussions that we had during V1 time was that players didn't actually want the system to change that much. They just wanted sharp edges knocked off. And remember sitting in one of the game stays up at Warlord, and we said, what you want, and to a man and woman, the players just said, well, we don't want a radical change. It's a really nice system. We like the richness, and some people said, complexity, and everybody said, no, it's richness. And we don't want a radical departure. So that's the thing about version 2. The main issues were that things needed explaining better, or needed rewording, or needed
re-emphasizing in some cases.
Yeah,
so some things which I imagined when I first wrote it as being important elements of the game were, as it turned out, just slipped away. So you had some very complicated systems, and they're complicated in that there was lots of detail and lots of variety, particularly in the terrain, for example. Which didn't really impact upon the game most of the time, but were there in your face in the rule book. So what we've done there is, as Tim was saying, knocked off the sharp edges. So not so much removed that detail, but put that detail into a later, more appropriate section. It's like, if you want to play all this advanced stuff for terrain, or complicated stuff for terrain, that's great. But we're not presenting it right at the front of the game. So if you're playing the game for the first time, maybe you're reading the book for the first time, you're not having to learn lots of really peculiar stuff about thermal vents and volcanic action and all sorts of stuff. You just get a more basic, this is how you move and this is how you react with terrain, for example. So, and I think that's true of a lot of things, especially munitions as well. I think it's just re-emphasizing the core game, and then putting some of the special detail into a special detail sections, I'd say was really what the job was to some extent. Now, on top of that, Tim has done a heroic job of completely redoing all the army lists. And
we were right about to ask about that.
And that is an enormous change.
I mean, that's the biggest change, but what it's actually done is actually gone back to what the players are asking for, and what the players actually want, so that all the lists, all the units now, the lists are all effectively what's the standard loadouts. And the other thing that they are is generally, whilst we've tried to keep these selectors which reflect what a faction's core units would be, and we've tried to say, look, use these, don't go crazy and use all the most powerful units here, there. If you've got a Concord force, they will have a number of strike squads, and they'll have a number of strike support teams. So those are at the core, but the rest of it around it is much more freeform. It's much more easy to put in other squads. And we've tried to make it clear that if you don't want to use lists, don't. It's your game, for goodness sake.
I think that's true, but at the same time, what you've done, and I think you and the player community have done together, really, done a fantastic job, in fact, is make sure that the lists are all playable and fair and balanced. Which, when I did the original game, was not a priority because we didn't have enough playtesters to really playtest them to death. And also, the game was, I tried to present it as more of a narrative game, and I think that's still the case.
It is. Very much so.
But if you, at the same time, I think if you want to approach it on a more competitive level, it will balance out better.
Yes, and that's been simple things just by costing order dice, for example. And that's there, and actually having standard loadouts for a squad being what most players had as standard loadouts, or wished as standard loadouts for a squad. Basic Concord Strike Squad standard is a leader with sling net, 3 normal troopers with plasma carbines, and a plasma lance guy, and a spotter. The leader all have got grenades, because given the grenades are really tiny, why wouldn't you end up on a battlefield with it? Especially if you could just put them in a little pouch at your belt, and everything else can be compacted. So that's what we've done. We've tried to have some fun as well with the list to actually make them more representative of the factions as a whole, as well as balancing that, as well as trying to keep that balance in there. So characters, you could use characters much easier now. You can the powers, they've been given powers mainly through the use of army options, but also individual common powers which are straightforward to use, and you can just use them without overpowering or messing up a game much at all. You can you can add lists up in your head. We found so that during playtesting, I used to give out lists and say, "There's the list," and the guys say, "Well, has the overall points changed?" No, and next thing you'd know, the guy's just written it down on a piece of paper, and there is the list, because it's it's basically it's run around the idea that 10 points is your standard squad. If you want to add a few more things to it, normally it's +2 for an extra model, or +1 for a buddy, that sort of stuff. So we've tried to make it a little simpler, but people are quite happy to bring things from their memory, if you see what I mean. And the lists are a little bit more representative as well, so it's easier to take more drones in a Concorde squad. If you're a Boromite, you can actually pull in all the rock dogs into your work gangs,
which I absolutely love, by the way.
Oh, cool, lovely. Which is reflective of the Boromites. They've work gangs been hi ho at the work phase, and they've been called by someone from above. Oi! Somebody's trying to claim jump, so they've just gone running out, and they put their rock dogs at their heels, and their micromites, and it's just a case of, what tools have we got? So we've abstracted that. So some of the weapons have been pulled together into particular groups. So, for example, rather than having mass compactors and tractor mauls and heavy tractor mauls and other bits and bobs, you've just got compactor maul, which basically is just combined of all of those into one, which basically reflects the tools, the mixed tools, which the Boromites would have at a work face. So, and that's it. The only things that have been changed are really the phase squads. They've now got an optional weapon. I've spent the last few months pulling everything back so it's in the version 1 list rather than looking as to what version 2 was going to be. And there have been some constraints from...
Didn't see that. if I just disappear, guys, it'll be because the cat's walked across the keyboard. I'm sorry.
I love it.
But so it's that phase squads with a new rifle for the Isaurians, and we haven't been able to add in more models. But at the end of the day, and we've had to pull some out because of production issues and complications, and that's what Skytrax have asked for. But overall, almost any model you've actually got now can be used on the tabletop in version.
I think it's fair to say that what we've done is actually aligned the models and the game more accurately, because obviously when the game was created there were no models at all, and one fondly imagined Warlord were going to make this, that and the other, and they made some and didn't make others, and made some things that were a bit of a surprise. So this time at least we've got the advantage that we knew what was there.
Yeah, that's true.
And we worked with that. So I think overall, what we've described is essentially the same game, but better.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's exactly what you want from a version 2.
It is, yeah. I think everyone who's played version 2, from what I've heard, everyone who's played version 2 has liked version 2 and had difficulty then going back to version 1, because for the time it was a little bit and because it's been ready for a long time. But V2 has been, Tim's been refining it and working on it all the time, because why stop? But in essence, we were ready to go with it 2 years ago.
Now, we've been really enjoying being guest stars on Tim's Freeborn Shard podcast, doing radio-esque dramas revolving around the stories of Antares. It's called Revenge, correct, Tim? Is the title?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Revenge.
And so in that story, which we'll have the description for the Freeborn podcast there, but it revolves around the Gar Civil War, and so I love listening to the story and seeing how it is going to be reshaping. How did that storyline and its conclusion kind of shape the Gar faction moving forward?
Well, the trouble is, this is where I probably have to say spoilers. Basically, that's one of the issues with the list in version 1 is that the Gar outcasts and the Gar Empire and the Gar Exiles, to some extent, were all a bit of a mess. It was this real splurgy, whatever it is. So what we've done with that storyline, and the story is actually up on the new Nixus now, is consolidate the GAR into a single list. And you can read people will be able to read the story. I'll just check it's actually up on the Nexus. I'm sure it is. And that's really what that has done. It's pulled it together into something that is more coherent. It's more readily grasped. It's easier to handle, and it actually produces. One of the big issues was the rebels. It was so easy, so easy to destroy the game using the rebel army list, and people were doing it, which is not what the intention was in the first place at all. So we've actually sort of like pulled everything together, so it's there, but you can still use all your rebel models. You can still use your rebel army lists, not army lists. You can still use all your rebel vehicles, and we've even got Nurk 27 in the core list as well. So you can use Nurk, who was from
fantastic.
I think many people were worried about him.
Yeah. That's a great model too. It's fantastic. Now our patrons are always discussing insane fan theories and stuff, and we're always like contemplating the ins and outs of Antares. Our patron John wanted to ask you guys. He has a theory that the GAR were created originally, way back when, to answer the threat of the Voral alien invasions. Can you guys confirm or deny that?
I think we can neither confirm nor deny it.
And the rumor mill keeps turning.
I was just say, it's like, and now John's gears are flipping around.
What one has to consider, and this is obviously we've combed through the Intel archives, often contradictory Intel archives of the Istorians and the Panhuman Concord, and given that the GAR have got this hatred of humanity, we suspect that it wasn't, but of course, as Rick said, we just cannot confirm. There's no evidence one way or the other.
Well, nobody knows is the answer,
Fantastic.
isn't it? I mean, nobody knows.
I love the mystery.
Well, I think you have to do it. I think the minute you start to try and explain things in that, things go to pot, like Doctor Who, for example. You have to kind of have some things which are not knowable in reality, in the fictional context.
Yeah,
you shouldn't really go and explain as the author, because if they're not knowable in the actual context, why would you? There's no need to know for a start. And knowing is simply, it kind of spoils it. Much more interesting.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it could well be that they're actually created in by humans to actually fight another human faction. It could have been a Fifth Age thing.
That's the logic of it. That's exactly the logic of it. But who knows?
Mm-hmm.
That would fit.
They were created by Voral.
I was just about. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, the Voral created the GAR.
Yeah, it would kind of fit the facts, wouldn't it?
Yeah, actually, it would. Yeah.
They abduct humans, do a little, little engineering, give them dinosaur feet. They're good to go.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Voral, I mean, obviously the question that constantly comes up is there any plans for the Voral to hit version 2, even if it's like in a miniature agnostic way with just like a rule set as opposed to
I'll just take
miniatures.
a rule set.
Yeah.
I'll hand that over to you, Rick.
Right, okay. Well, I'm sure this is a bit of a giveaway, really. But okay. One of the things, when I wrote the game, I always pictured the Voral as being the big opposition side to the humans. Mm-hmm. There's the human Antarian nexus, which covers most of the surface of Antares. And then there's the Voral, and the Voral are almost like the other half. So they're the major players. It's like the yin and the yang sort of thing. And I originally conceived that the Voral was going to be the first major supplement for Antares, which I had planned to come out something like 3 months after launch, which just goes to show you. But Warlord really, they struggled to get anything out. So in the end, the Voral kept getting pulled back. And we had a few concepts done, but because Warlord wanted them to be bigger and more monstrous because they like things which are big. Whereas I always saw them as analogues to humans. Not necessarily a little bit bigger than humans, perhaps bigger than humans, but not vast, because you want the tabletop wargames army, and you want. So if something's the size of a GAR battle suit, the units have to be quite small, like 3.
For people who don't know the system super well, do you mind describing like what a Voral looks like or is?
Well, I'd say nobody knows, but I always imagine them as being kind of arthropods that are like vaguely scorpion shape in vague form, but instead of having a stinger where a scorpion has a stinger, that's where their head is, and instead of having a head where a scorpion has its head and claws, that's it kind of has a set of mandibles there, so it's like a C shape but with the head at the top and its legs at the bottom.
Okay.
So cool.
That is super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we'd very much like to introduce Voral over the next, I don't know, few months, years, as we go forward. I mean, remember, me and Tim are doing this on the basis of being hobbyists. So anything we do is of our own free time. And anything that we fund is what I would fund. So it's not a commercial consideration, and for that reason, we'd probably go with STL files initially. Potentially, we could do production. In fact, potentially, Skytrex would probably undertake production if we were to give them things.
Yeah,
because they like that when people give them things for free. Quite happy to do it then. It's just when they have to pay for the designs seem a bit iffy. But we potentially could do that. But I think STL files gives us a great way of going forward on a hobby basis. It's increasingly the way that these hobby systems are being developed. Many more people are getting 3D printers, and many more people are offering 3D printing services.
Yeah, high quality as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and you can 3D print something to a higher quality than you can cast it. That's for sure. Because what Warlord do is that's what their STL. They have a 3D designer, and a lot of their stuff is designed as STL files, outputted through a 3D printer, and then they use those prints to make the master molds, and then they use those molds to make production molds. So the STL file is giving you a better result as long as it's an appropriate printer that you've got. But I think even the cheaper, I'm talking about the proper printers, not the ones that have a thread. They'll give you a level of detail that you'll get off a plastic figure.
That's the truth.
By 1 micron, we'd love to do that, and we have actually started talking to a sculptor.
Oh,
that's fantastic news.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks.
Oh my god.
Well, we're early days. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, right. That's exciting news, though. But
we've got some sketches of Voral, but that's about it at the moment. That's about as far as it goes.
Well, all those changes, and that's pretty cool stuff coming in the future. Then hopefully, as far as we've talked about Antares versus other games a little bit. For someone who is new to the system, how would you guys kind of describe Antares version 2 sitting apart from contemporary war games?
Well, in many ways, Antares is quite an old-fashioned game in that it's
stats based.
It's stats based. There's maths. Sorry, you have to do adding up and subtracting. It's quite I won't say it's a big game, because you can play a game with, say, 30 figures aside, but it's not 5 figures aside. Yeah. It's not one of these modern 5 figures aside card-driven mechanics. It could be a book game. So many of modern war. It's what people like. That's fine. There's many modern little war games are really not figure-based skirmish war games. They're card games or board games with an element of models in them. I could design those, but that's not what I did. I designed Antares to be something like 40k in terms of, or I perceived 40k in terms of its models, or even like bolt action. bolt action in space was one of the kind of drivers. Because Alessio and I wrote bolt action, and we enjoyed that. But we wrote that for, I don't know, let's say 30 figures, a tank, an armored car, a few, the odd heavy weapon. And that's kind of the scale which Antares works best, in my opinion. A lot of people who play bolt action, and I'm sure many people who listen to this will, they tend to play much bigger games, but the games are bigger than we originally intended. And that tends to be the way. You invent a game for 30 figures, people play with 50. You invent a game for 5 figures, people play with 20. It seems to be the way that. I don't know. And that's kind of the game Antares is. It's that scale of game. So I was saying like 40k, but I've not actually been anywhere near 40k for like 12 years or more. I don't even know what 40k is anymore.
Yeah.
But it is that scale still, it's the sort of reinforced platoons, I suppose, and that's very often what you see on the tabletop with 40k. Even nowadays, our club plays a lot of 40k as well. But
of course, none of my friends do, because all my friends used to work for Games Workshop. So consequently, they won't play any science fiction or fantasy ever. Almost not. The only people I play fantasy with are not really Games Workshop, are not ex-Games Workshop, or they're very casually Games Workshop. Work for Mail Order for half a day or something. It's interesting, isn't it? And when you think about it, the Perrys worked at Games Workshop for 30 years. Never played a fantasy science fiction game in my life. Hate it with a passion.
That's hilarious.
So we already talked about a little bit of what you guys are doing now that Antares is like the reins have been passed to you, so to speak. Do you have any like major goals that you're looking towards making as far as like moving production forward, or are we just kind of like focusing on version 2 right now?
My major goal is to rest.
Amen.
That's fair.
That is totally fair.
Yeah, we've been talking to Tim throughout this entire process.
He's working
Tim has been working like a madman.
I know. And Tim was employed by Warlord, of course, but no longer. So I think when Warlord decided they didn't want to go ahead with version 2, and effectively didn't want to go ahead with Antares as a major commitment, Tim and I got together and we thought, well, we've spent so much time, and particularly Tim, so much time and effort putting together this V2. We couldn't let it just disappear, because that was the problem.
That was the thing.
So our ambition was simply to go, I'll tell you what, let's put a website together and let's put everything that we've got for V2 onto that website in an accessible format, so that players who want to access it can do. And that was the ambition. It's got a long way beyond that, because Tim's actually gone back and he's reworked a lot of the existing material that was on the Warlord website and put it onto the new website. I mean, insane amounts of stuff, way more than I would have done anyway. And it's all free, of course. I mean, what I've done is you put the V2 as Tim's described, in manageable chunks. Everything, so everything is separate chunks. So you don't have to. If you want the GAR army list, you don't have to download every other army list at the same time. All in PDF format and zip file, and you can print it, or you can just look online, and it's all free.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, well, we to be honest, the challenge of making it anything other than free would have been but we didn't want to charge. We thought it was we were going to do this on a hobby basis, and that way it's a more honest approach.
So absolutely, it's a very how would you say it? it's there for people to actually use and develop, and for them to develop should they wish to. So the core rules, you can actually build stuff around that. The arms and equipment is in a separate book again, and then you've got playing the game, which actually relates to lists and scenarios and stuff. And then the actual universe guide is separate still. There's 2 versions of the universe guide. One is black and white, which is about 5 meg, and one is the color version, which has got all the images and everything else, the actual models. The universe guide is quite a big book, actually. It's about 80, 90, 100 pages, something like that. Because
that's fantastic.
One of the things Rick did for the first when we told about version 2, Rick did a complete timeline of Panhuman Antares development, and that's now in the back of the universe guide. And it's got so rich. It's got so much info in there. It's really good.
That's great. You just loaded our guns for 3 months worth of lore videos.
I love the lore. Now, and I would imagine the way that everything's set up now, if you were to need to make any changes or anything to the rule set, you would be able to just update those pretty easily, I'd imagine, correct?
Exactly so. Yeah.
I was about to say, I was like, that's phenomenal, because that's
great.
That's always the pain of having to wait for entire new iterations rather than just making small changes.
Yeah, it makes it like a living document.
But the key thing is that players, it's a very different paradigm, and players have to get used to that. Yes, we can produce a pod version, and we've already discussed it, and we could actually probably produce 4 different pod files, but we don't want to put the army lists into a printed fixed format like that, because they are the things that are likely to change more often. And one of the things we like to do is, if need be, is if we find that some of the rules need optimizing, and nothing beats testing like a big player base, taking advantage of rules even when they've actually been tested as thoroughly as this lot has been. We don't really want to get locked into, well, that's a book, we've now got to release all these little updates. It's got to be, I think, digital first, which makes things a lot more easy for us. And then the pod perhaps cascading down from that from time to time. So even if we did do pod, and we have discussed it, we are looking at it, it would be we'd still update it every so often, so that you can still get the latest pod if you prefer a printed document. But players, I know playtesters are already taking these files down to get them printed and bound by the local printing service, and that's
absolutely
absolutely fine.
Kevin has many binders of printed rule books. He puts tabs on all of them and stuff.
I love it. It's fantastic. Now, we our patrons had a few questions as far as just things that might be something that you're considering doing. Luis wanted to know, do you guys foresee yourself ever producing another not a full supplement, I guess, but campaigns in the future?
Something like the Raiders of Bronvar or something like that.
I think that's really comes down to the players. If players want to produce that, then fine, we'd love to put it up there. Right now, my focus is on getting version 2 out and getting it up so that players can actually use it in a usable form. And then obviously I've hopefully got a new job coming soon and getting used to that. But this is now an opportunity for players to actually contribute stuff and to actually create stuff. Bromvar was obviously Adam's creation. And that turned into a supplement, and that's fine. But there's nothing to say we can't put those online and actually produce little handouts in the same way. We'd love to. We were just talking about this earlier. We'd love to produce Bromvar as another version 2 supplement with just the Bromvar stuff in it.
Nice,
And and perhaps some Splintering Shard or some of the other supplements. But that's all time and effort and workload. If players such as yourselves come up with a scenario, a series of scenarios in version 2 format, then we'd love to load them up to the Nexus and let people have them. So.
Good to know. we have several.
Well, that's cool, but remember, we're talking about a non-commercial environment.
Exactly.
So it's a lot of effort for only glory.
Mhm.
But I mean, it would be nice to do more stuff. We don't have any plans at the moment, but we shall see.
It's just talking at the moment. Yeah, it's options we could do. We'll see how this first thing goes, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, about doing this in the way in which we are doing it. In fact, we've been relieved. We no longer have to take into account all the commercial concerns that we would have if we were working with Warlords. So actually, we're much freer to do things than we were. Much freer in reality. But at the same time, it is being done on the basis of a hobby. So we've lost less time to actually put into it. And when you need professional resources to do something like design models, or put together graphics for a supplement or something like that, then all of a sudden then it's more difficult. It's a different mix of things. Interesting.
I guess in that theme, a lot of our patrons were asking, and this came specifically from Ruben and Nick. If you gentlemen were right, you guys might know these people. Are there plans? Have you considered at all any kind of, I guess, like crowdfunding or anything like Patreon, Kickstarter, anything for some of these projects?
No, the only reason you crowdfund is to fund something. If you didn't have the money, it's not. I mean, I've been funding little bits, but it's not expensive, Things like websites and the odd model and what have you. The money's not the issue; it's finding people to do it. That's the issue. Because when you're working within Warlord, you've got studio, you've got people who are paid there to sit at a desk for 8 hours and either sculpt or put stuff together.
And to be fair to Warlord, they were actually very nice over the last 3 months and just saying, okay, this is going to be. You're going to be made redundant, and there's nothing else to do. And as people know, some of the Fifth Age articles got stopped after they were done. But Warlord just said, "Okay, well, fine. If you want to work on version 2, go ahead." And that was really nice of them. So,
they've also allowed us access to all of the art files.
Yeah,
nice. They didn't have to.
That's fantastic.
So we've done this in cooperation with Warlord. I think to some extent Warlord were a little bit, sort of like they realised that we'd put so much work into it, and I'm an investor in Warlord, so I own the company. So there's a certain amount of give and take.
And I guess, so in the theme of, like you said, people being able to kind of volunteer up the creative work that they've done, like things that they could add to the system. Would there be any possibility maybe down the line? Because I'm almost positive, Rick, you designed a system to aid in the creation of like custom units for Warlords of Erewhon.
Oh yeah,
did you not?
Todd was asking about this.
Yeah, that was the points value system. Well, that points value system was exactly the same as the original Antares points value system, but the new Antares points system is different again. So, although that could be done, I think we'd be relying on Tim to do it rather than me.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences is that why I'm really, really hesitant about actually putting out a detailed point system like that is that if you look at each game and you look at what the core aspect of each game is, people got used to list building in 40k as being actually the core of the system. There are people who just collect models and just build lists because that's the core of the system. Whereas Antares is far more a playing game, and the points are there. The point system is merely there to try and support the actual game. It's still a narrative game very much, and you will be able to completely and utterly destroy the point system really quite easily. Which is why in version 2 we've actually gone towards this far more straightforward system. It's just by saying these are the basic points. It's 10 points for a common squad. And that's slightly discounted, and across all of the army lists, so all their core units are slightly discounted. But every other squad, is just full price, and then you just add on bits for particular capabilities. And if you want to build your own units, you follow exactly the same process. There was somebody who wrote a little thing for one of the early versions of version 2. See what I mean? Early subversions of version 2. I like version numbering. Way back in 2.3 or 2.4, we're currently on 2.11. He basically just said, take a squad like a Freeborn Damari squad, was actually being fairly simple to what I want, and just add on a few bits to it. If you want it armed with everybody with plasma carbines, that's plus 1 point. If you want a few more drones added on, you can just take the points from the existing system, and that's still going to be the best way to modify and create your own version 2 units. And if you want to do that and create your own army list and your own squads, please do go ahead. It will mean if we have to curate the content to put onto the new Nexus, it will make my job much easier if you use that. The key thing, though, is that it's really easy to really twist these these heavily point-based systems upwards, so that you create something which is impossible to beat or is impossible to...
Yeah, power creep is always an issue.
Yeah,
it's with any points value system. You can't take account of the extreme ends. So if you create because if you assign points for movement and for shooting and for combat, and then you create a creature which is only shoots, and so you basically take the discount from the movement, and you take the discount from its fighting, but you make sure it never ever fights or moves. And so it becomes a super shooting unit at a ridiculously cheap price, because you've cheated. Basically, you've manipulated the system. What the system's there to do is to go, what is this thing like in your imagined reality? How does it operate? Let's assign it stats, and then let's give those a value. If you take it the other way around, let's start off with a value. How can we maximize the stat? Then you break it very quickly. In fact, the Error One system explains that in some depth.
Yeah, I do have an Excel spreadsheet to calculate everything, because it is still derived from the version 1. But throughout, it actually says XXX discounted by so many points, Y by Y added extra few points, because we found in playtesting that some units were too effective, which is exactly what Rick's saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of X factors in that. Like, something could be really, really normal on paper, and then you're like, oh wow, in this specific instance, it's like the greatest thing in the universe.
Yes, absolutely.
Problem.
So, talking a little bit about the two of you, how did you two meet and start designing together? What's the epoch of the Tim and Rick working relationship?
Well, it was with Antares, I think, wasn't it, Tim? I don't think we met before then, and I think I'd produced the game and it had been published, and Tim just started contributing as one of our players to begin with, and we came up with a publishing deal with a friend of ours, Vince Rossbond in America, and we knew we wanted to do some fiction based around Antares, and Tim has written fiction and has a sort of enthusiasm for the game, and immediately started writing some really cool bits of fiction for it. And I think that was one of the things that first brought us together.
Yeah, it was either that or possibly at the very first boot camp that Antares had as well, because I remember there was an issue with Gar Tetrists at the time, and I wanted to make a point about how crazy they could be used, and I did use them like that deliberately.
So it's your fault my Gar Tectors can't charge people?
Yeah,
the truth comes out.
Yeah, the Gar Tetrist always won every single assault it went into.
That's awesome.
As it should be. That's how the universe should work.
It survived. But yeah, so I think that's when we first met. Yeah, absolutely. It was a combination of fiction when it was via email contact, and very often a lot of contacts start that way anyway. Yeah. And then we met that, and then things developed from there, actually. And
and you used to come up and run the events. I think even before you worked for Warlord, you'd come and help out with the events. So we kind of like, and because I always think when people come and help, and Tim would come quite a long way. I mean, you live down in Stonehenge in Wiltshire, didn't you?
Yeah.
So it would be an overnight drive, and then you stay in a hotel, and then you're working the next day, and you know all these. You guys go to conventions, you know what these things are like. So I think you kind of think, well, what's he going to? Poor swine's on his own. Let's go and take him out, feed him full of curry. That'll do it good.
So I helped. So do that, and that really helped. I can always go with a good curry. Yeah, and I ended up proofreading Crisis Shard for you. And we only ended up having, I think, one error coming through in the end, which was missing some special munitions. And then actually, this is the thing which people don't realise, is that Drone Scourge was a fan-sourced supplement,
which is cool.
I put together a proposal for a few bits and bobs, and then the studio said, "No, we want these in it as well. Can you put these in it?" Okay, fine, I'll put those in it. Instead, and that was the Virai. I was originally going with the feral heavy list, heavy book, and then they said because players wanted ferals, and then they said no, but we want this drone, we want these drones. So I'm thinking, okay, fine, I'll
there you have the horror of having to work in a commercial environment.
Yeah. That's the way it is. Okay. These drones are paranoid, and the studio said, "Oh, that sounds good." Okay, I'm now going to write about paranoid drones. So
that's awesome. So, and obviously, you guys have been working on this forever. We and our patron Knight Silver, what is your favorite factions? Because you said feral heavy list, and I was like, I know how much you enjoy the Freeborn, but what would you say is your favorite factions?
I know what Tim's favourite faction is. It's got to be the Gar, isn't it?
I was about to say,
I said that right before we started this interview.
Everybody knew that answer.
Everybody knows that Tim's favourite faction is the Gar. Right.
I have a mug at my local club which says they call me Mr. Gar.
Yes, I love it.
That's fantastic.
I'm sure people will see it at the games day.
I like the Gar as well, but I don't know I'm not sure I have a favourite faction in the same way. I've got a little bit of, I suppose, Boromite, because that's the first thing I did go for. Yeah, I quite like the character of Boromite.
That's a fantastic
miniature as well. Yeah, I think I tend to kind of favouritize whichever thing I'm working on at the time.
That makes I get that.
I mean, I do quite like the Concord. Just vanilla Concord, just the strike force.
Yep.
It's the strike squads and the support drones and a few support weapon teams and
the Algorithm as well. I mean, I really like the Algorithm. I think they're actually some of the nicer models that Warlord did. The only things I don't have any of are the Isaurians, and that's because it took them so long to get the Isaurian models done. So I just didn't get around to it. But they're actually quite nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, the sculpts for them ended up being so cool. Oh, absolutely. They have some of the neatest vehicles for sure.
From a narrative. The Isaurian vehicles, they are my favourite vehicles, I have to say. The Isaurian vehicles, whilst I really like the M4 and the T7, the Isaurian vehicles are just so cool. From a narrative perspective, though, the Freeborn offer so much opportunity. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. If you're actually writing about them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're the most relatable humans.
Yeah, that's right.
And actually, on that note, our patron Michael wanted to ask Tim specifically, do you have any plans on future, I don't know if I'd say novels, but just stories in Antares that you're working on?
Well, apart from Revenge, which I've just written, there is nothing I have in the pipe work at the moment for Antares in terms of fiction. Will I say never? No, because things have been really intense over the past few years and over the past few months, and I really do need a break from Antares in order to decide where I want to go next. And I don't know what will happen with my new job, so we'll see what happens with that. It's what Rick said earlier. It's a case of never say never.
Right.
Batu has certainly come to the end of his story arc, because basically no one dare attack him, no one dare approach him ever again. Our Isaurians got their fingers burnt. The Concord have watched him burn the Isaurians, so now they're thinking, keep back. The other freeborn houses are just now thinking, we won't go near him. So he's out. I mean, Shaltok and his guys, yes, maybe. Actually, I lied. There is a story I've got about Shaltok and his Gar attacking a planet, which is fairly well through, and maybe I'll finish that. I forgot about that, actually. But we'll see. No, I don't have anything planned. Do I have any other fiction? Yes, I've got a book on the works, which I don't like the ending to, so I'm going to rewrite that, but that's not Antares. I may republish some of the other fiction I've written. I don't know. I mean, I will never go away from fiction. I just like writing fiction, so...
Well, please continue. You're very good at it.
Yeah.
I love it.
We did have one more. Our patron Jamie had asked, Tim specifically, everyone really loved Incision Shard. So we really want, are there going to be any other like Antares related, but not exactly Antares games, like space battles, perhaps a Gar Outcast gladiatorial arena game?
You guys don't do that
well. Over the years, both Tim and I have had a go at other games set in the Antarian universe. In fact, Tim wrote an entire set of spaceship combat rules. Which, you know, I mean, they're quite complex, he says, being old and, you know, a bit knackered. But they are.
They reflect Antares, and as Rick said, because they went through a number of different iterations and things got changed very heavily. They came across a bit complex, and then I had to pull out loads of stuff. But they're there, they're working, they're operable, and they do give the flavour of each faction. If I was to produce those, and it's something that's certainly on the cards to actually load up onto the Nexus, I would go back and actually streamline some things to make them easier to use, because I was trying to cope with the fact that you've got these insanely fast ships, but who have to slow down for combat. Because otherwise, if you're trying to target a ship that's heading away from you at a substantial, with an acceleration of a substantial, something like 300G, 200G, or something which can actually fly at something like 10% the speed of light inside a system, that is phenomenal speeds, and it actually suggests that those ships have got phenomenal shielding in order to cope with those speeds in the first place, because at that speed, you know, a grain of dust comes something different, and it doesn't make for a good game.
I think it's fair to say at this stage, I ought to point out that most people, when they design spaceship combat games, start off with an idea of playing a game a bit like the Battle of Britain, World War II,
yes, absolutely,
Star Wars, you know, that kind of thing. Tim started off from the point of view of real physics.
Yep. I totally get it. It has to make sense. I'm right there with you, Tim.
You realise this acceleration would kill anyone on board, you know. It's like
which means you've got to have, you've got to be able to counter the G-forces, which led to the whole gravitic annihilation drive. And I've got a very complex spreadsheet as well, which astrophysicists helped me put together to actually calculate how long it takes ships to travel from the gate horizon to a planet. So that's why it's there, but I'd prefer to actually try and do something else with it. Other things, yes, there is, as you two know very well, because you helped me play test it. There is 2/3 of an RPG.
Fantastic.
We
kept our mouths totally sealed about that.
In addition, years ago I actually did a Gar gladiatorial game.
Yeah.
Really?
With scutters.
Yeah. Well, where is it? I want to play it right
in a box
tonight.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, with scutters. It was a dice-driven game in which your basic scutters you start on opposite sides of a sort of coffee table or a little table, and your scutters are either on the baseline, halfway to the middle, or in the middle, and they just go forward and bit. So it's not a proper skirmish war game. It's one of those kind of modern style card driven or dice driven.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fantastic.
I'm building a Gar arena.
During lockdown, I did produce a set of Scuttle racing rules, which I'll probably redo for version 2 sometime.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I kept on losing, though, to the solo version of those rules. So.
That's always depressing, right?
Yeah, push you off.
That would be so fun to make a battle report for it. We could like paint like a Gar Scudder like fire engine red.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a red one and a blue one.
Yeah, exactly. Powered by Slurn.
Yeah, exactly.
The Gar drink you crave.
Logo. I love it.
Sponsored by Fartok.
Yeah,
Sponsored
exactly.
by the Supreme Commander.
Yeah.
Every ticket receives a fresh loaf of Soylent Orange. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh.
So, again, we're super excited to have you guys on. But before we go, is there anything that you specifically wanted to say to the Antares community? Any messages that you want to get out as version 2 is dropping?
Well, let me thank you very much for all your enthusiasm and for participating and for contributing. And so many people have helped. I don't think we couldn't have done V2 without the player community support.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure Tim would second that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great bunch of playtesters who have adhered to these clean room environments really, really well, and they have contributed within the spirit of the rules. We've had some really great input into certain things about the rules, which have been really great. People have been very helpful from that. And we've had some people who've been lovely helping us with the Nexus too. Seb Jacquet has translated everything into French. I think there's Rodriguez Roldan, who is translating it all into Spanish. And we'll put those up on the Nexus as well. And, I think Antares is moving into a stage where it really is, if the community wants to get stuff done, it will get done. There is on the home page, I can't show it to you, sorry, but there is one of the menu entries is 3D STLs. We've got them already. So
that's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, it's been fantastic having you guys on. We can't
really
thank you enough
for
coming on and being guests. This was a blast.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And we really appreciate all the work you guys have done on Antares and what work you'll be doing on it in the future. We really appreciate it. It's an amazing setting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching our interview today. If you enjoyed this content, please help us in our battle against the algorithm by liking this video, subscribing to the channel if you have not done so already, and making sure that notifications are enabled so that you may see when we release new content.
If you want to support the channel even further, we do have a Spring link in the description below to buy awesome shirts like Kevin is modeling with grace and beauty over there.
That's how they do it on the runway.
You can purchase any of those with that awesome link.
But the best way to support our channel always remains joining our ever-growing Patreon community, where you get bonus content when you sign up for any level of pledge.
And as always, we'll see you on the tabletop.